right, I'm going to kick things off here. So thanks so much for joining this session. We're going to be covering the topic of securing the software supply chain and diving straight into what you just heard everything about in terms of Docker Scout, GA, and everything that goes along with that. So just as a reminder, Docker Scout is now in general availability. We're really excited to see you get up and started and running, and we'll show a demo to show some of those really core capabilities that you can use with Docker Scout general availability. I'm going to just set a little broader kind of framing here and just kind of talk through some of the ways in which Docker Scout really helps our customers to address these really poignant, really tricky challenges that are really core to how Docker Scout was first built and why it's built to solve for those problems. So just as a really broad-based overview, so Docker Scout is really focused on generating these signals across the software supply chain, so across all of the integrations that we just discussed in the keynote, and really help to inform development workflows, and we'll step through a couple of those development workflows that you also heard from Stuart Power, a customer over at JW Player. Thanks so much, Stuart, for walking the audience through some of those insights. So additionally, developers are really thinking about how to really take the opportunity to really use these contextual recommendations that are right there where you work and really leverage the data that's collected through all of these many integrations and really have the ability to step through into a set of remediation workflows as a result of that. So just to kind of step through and go into a bit more detail around how we keep hearing again and again from customers what these challenges are in terms of how they need to be addressed and how Docker Scout can help to really address those head on is initially this concept of a black box, right? So ultimately it comes down to issues are being caught far too late in the development workflow, maybe just before production. Security team then steps in and tells the developer they really need to step in and solve for a specific security challenge, all while something is really in the process of needing to be pushed to production quickly. And then additionally, just lack of insights. Ultimately, there may be a whole host of insights coming in, but then in reality, it's really hard to extract the signal from that, which we'll step into in the noise portion. And those insights really tend to start to really not have the context that is needed and really lack that end-to-end visibility that you can get across a whole wide range of integrations. So stepping into that kind of next piece is really that it comes down to the noise that is associated with this. So this is such a common challenge to think about. If there are just too many issues to prioritize, not enough information to really be able to triage effectively and really step through into what the right solution will be. And then really disconnection from the real risk exposure that is originally what you're really trying to solve for. And then ultimately, when we think about poor developer experience, and all of the context shifting that goes into really trying to solve and think about how to secure the software supply chain more successfully, you end up with these really repetitive tasks and really jumping between a lot of different point solutions, difficulty of collaboration between development teams and security teams in the process, and just not enough traceability that goes into having an effective mechanism to really track everything end to end through all of these processes. So when it comes down to really helping to really solve for those core challenges, it steps through kind of in some ways that you can summarize it quickly as this analyze, remediate, evaluate kind of workflow. So starting with the analysis piece. So Docker Scout, as you saw in the demo, and we'll go into more detail in an additional demo today, really helps you to think about how to analyze and add more context into components, libraries, tools, and processes, and really have that much more transparency across the software supply chain, and then really be able to then step into being able to remediate that and have the ability to really, where Docker Scout can help you to be guided towards these smarter development decisions through context-aware recommendations. All throughout the process, you have evaluation through policy evaluation that really helps to detect, highlight, and suggest these corrections based on these relevant changes. So if you see a slight deviation based on the policies that you have set, and we'll be able to show more of those out-of-the-box policies, then it really helps to show more from that context. What it ultimately comes down to is really being able to build with reliability and security built in from the start, right? So Amy was able to step through a lot of the really core pieces that come into play here. So firstly, trusted content, right? So Docker official images, Docker verified publishers, Docker-sponsored open source content as well. Really allows you to track the full life cycle of software artifacts and really be able to build on trusted content from the start so that you're preventing some of those challenges that can come in down the road. And then additionally, the centralized view. So really being able to operate from one view of centralized insights and really have visibility control across the board and be able to really step through and look at all of the different policies that are most relevant for your sets of data sources you're looking at. And then recommended workflows, right? So really being able to build faster and more reliably through the demo that CD was able to show earlier as well, and really able to have those context-aware recommendations embedded into developer workflows as a result of that. So with that, I'm going to actually step into a quick demo from CD. And just prior to that, I'm going to just show one more thing. Just give me one moment here. Can we switch screens for a moment? And we'll just switch back really quickly. So yeah, I just want to show one quick summary here too, and just give a better sense of how recommended remediation paths, policy evaluation, and trusted content, just to really cement that, really come together and show all of the different ways in which within this centralized view, you can see, for example, policy time-based trends, number of vulnerabilities, and watch for those trend lines, and then be able to have that much more context as you make these sets of decisions. So with that, yeah, I will now pass it over to CD, and we'll switch screens. Sorry.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. So what I wasn't allowed to do in the keynote was effectively doing a live demo. So as you may have noticed, the internet was down when I started, so everything was kind of like loaded already and like really stressful. So what I'll try is take you through the product live. Things might break, things might go wrong because of internet, who knows, demo gods. So that's what I'm planning on doing. And I want to start with starting on scout.docker.com. As Jason said and Amy said earlier, Scout's GA now. You can sign up with your Docker Hub account. It's free up to 3 repositories for you to try out. Just give it a try, give us feedback. All right, here we are, scout.docker.com. First things first, you see kind of the policy tiles here. The first four are our out-of-the-box policies that you get when you enable. The bottom 2 are the ones that we kind of are in development and are kind of very specific, and they are only kind of existing on my namespace right now. But again, the first 4 are what you can kind of get today. And if I'm not mistaken, they're actually available to everyone. Is that right, Tazeen? Yeah, I think so, yeah. So when you log in, everyone can see those policies. So what I want to do is I want to take you through how you can use the information presented, bring this into your inner loop, start using the information, start remediating some of these violations or deviations, and kind of get through that flow all the way to the end. So let's start by taking a look at this policy here, which is kind of like highlights. Let me make this a bit bigger. Yeah. So it lists all the images that were last pushed into these repositories on Docker Hub or ECR or any other on-prem, for example, JFrog Artifactory that you can integrate. By the way, I should mention that. There is an integration section up here that you can use to start integrating your ECR, the things that I showed earlier. Sysdig is there, like all the integrations that we highlighted in the keynote. Let me start by selecting. I only care about images running in production again, right? So this is kind of where we bring in runtime insights. And there are various ways of delivering that information to us. I mentioned Sysdig during the keynote. There's also a way of like embedding our CLI into your deployment pipeline, sending these events in. There is also a Kubernetes admission controller that we're working on that you may be able to get your hands on very soon. And all of what we're doing with this is effectively marking images into a release stream. They are now kind of like part of an environment. And you can group these environments and name them as you like. They should really make sense to you and not really to us. We're not prescriptive in what your environments, what the environments are that you want to monitor. So I'll have this image deployed here in one of our Kubernetes clusters. And I can take a look into the details here. And this is now all the high and critical vulnerabilities with fixes older than 30 days. Just very important, and kind of like the idea that we have. The team's working hard on making this configurable for you. So should it be a week? Should it be 2 months? Should it be high and or critical? It's really up to our customers to kind of make sure that they get these policies as they want. So you see a bunch of like high and critical ones that I am being tasked by my PM to kind of go after and fixing those. So what we haven't done yet, again, something in the works, is tying this SaaS product to your source code repository, like tying this back into automated remediation. That's something that, again, next step for us, it'll happen, but it's not happening now. So I'll take this information now and go into my inner loop. Let me do this here. So this is our very simple, this is kind of an awkward position here, but let's see if that works. This is the tiny little demo app that we're using, or that I'm, what? Sarah resides? Nope. So you'll see a very simple Docker file. It's pinned to an old digest on purpose so that we can kind of simulate this being vulnerable to something. So don't get too hung up on this. And it's using Node, and it's installing a bunch of packages. Pretty random app and pretty common, I would say, in the front-end space. Doesn't matter. Scout works across all the platforms, all the image types, all operating systems, all stacks, Java, Go, Python, doesn't matter what you're using. And then here's our package.json. So let's start by first running the CLI on that image and getting a sense for what is the security status of this. CVEs. All right, so that was rather quick. And it's quick because, well, first of all, the internet is working apparently. And secondly, it is because this image has a lot of attestations. In fact, 2. It has provenance and an SBOM attestation. So these are coming out of BuildKit and making us not needing to kind of index the image. So we're not downloading the whole thing, looking into the image, what's in there. We can already get that from our, like the attestation. The attestation on the image tells us that. So what do we see here? In a little bit more detail, these are all links, and this is what I didn't show in the keynote, so you can click it, takes you to GitHub. I did see a banner up there on GitHub, which I didn't like, so clicked away really quickly. This is an interesting link. It takes you straight back to the line in the Docker file from your CLI, all done by correlating information coming out of various integrations. In this case, provenance from BuildKit, sitting in a registry somewhere. So what can I do now with this? So first of all, I can go ahead and say only package type npm, because there are a few CVEs in there that are coming from our base image. So let's take a look at the ones that I'm actually caring about first, which are the npm ones. And apparently they are really in use. So meaning this image is currently running in one of our production clusters. It is connected to Sysdig Runtime Insights. Again, there is a free trial, I think, available to everyone that is using Docker Scout, so you can get started with Sysdig to provide you this level of insight. What's kind of exciting about this is that Sysdig is able to tell us which packages inside of the image are being used at runtime. So kind of like removing all the ones that you accidentally added to your image, like build tools and like a shell and stuff like that, stuff that you normally wouldn't use at runtime. So I can see now these 2 vulnerabilities on the Express package and on the QS package are fixable. They have fixed versions, and that's probably what I want to do. If I quickly go back to our policy screen, you can see both of them here, right? So it is a policy violation that I've been asked to fix. So what can I do now? I effectively go in and open the package.json and do a quick local build. And I'm doing this locally now because I want to show you another feature of Scout, which is effectively our integration in Docker Desktop. So let's see how fast this actually is. In the meantime, I can already bring up Docker Desktop here. There we go, has started. And I see my image up here as the first in this. I can click it now, and I'll see a visual representation of the SBOM first and foremost, the image hierarchy. So this is the section up here. So you have kind of local insights into what are the base images, what are the base images of your base image, how are they in terms of are there any more current versions. So in this case, I'm using Alpine, and there is a newer version available. And I can start selecting these layers, and it will start highlighting me what belongs where. So if I select a base image, it shows me the layers of that image. If I'm selecting a layer, it shows me the packages that get introduced by this particular layer. So I can go ahead here and see that this layer now here, which is still adding Express and all the other NPM packages, you can see all this information here, is now free of vulnerability. So in fact, we fixed already 2 of the ones that we were asked to fix in our policy. Now, another really exciting feature that I think highlighted in the demo is if we go back to our policy screen here real quick and select the other policy, the base image update policy, select one of these images. I'm going to stick to the AMD 64 version here. It tells me that, you know what, there's a newer version of your base image. Remember, I was using 3.14, so it does 2 things. First and foremost, tells me there is a new digest for the 3.14 image. So I'm using the tag. I built the image against the 3.14 tag, and in the meantime, that tag has moved on. So there is a newer version on Docker Hub that I should update. That's just a simple rebuild if I remove the pin in the from line. But the system also tells me, or Scout tells me, that, you know what, there's actually a better alternative here, which is like 3.18, the latest version of Alpine. You can get the same information down here in Docker Desktop. So you have the same screen. You see it's now 3.18, and I can go ahead and do this in my Docker file real quick. So let's do this quickly. And let's build again. Oh, that was fast. And everything's green. So with a few simple steps, it's not automated yet, but it is very informative. You can do this all locally. And we've been seeing, Stuart was a great testimonial to this. We're seeing great successes by giving people, developers, the level of insight and helping them doing that in their inner loop. All right, let's take a quick look what happens if I push this image now into kind of like our Git repository. So I'll do, I should probably check this out into a branch. And git push. Does it want? I think I may already have that branch, so let's do a All right, let's go to the GitHub repository. It's apparently a billing problem with one of our orgs. It's always nice to see. Where did I push this to now? I shouldn't be using the CLI. I should really stick to like the dumb tools. This is now being pushed. Hopefully a GitHub action is now kicking in. Let's switch over to that. There we go. There's a build running. And the Docker build, I mean, this is a stock standard Docker build now running on GitHub Actions. What it does, it's going to push this into the repository. And within a few seconds or minutes, we'll see that new image on scout.docker.com. And hopefully we'll get updated policy results. So let's wait for this to happen. While we do this, why don't we just take a quick look at another integration that we have. All right. The thing that I wanted to show, all right. Jason, David, can you pass me the phone real quick? The joy of corporate SSO. There we go. What I wanted to show you is we have a GitHub action integration that on PRs and other kind of activities that where GitHub runs, you can take our action and effectively kind of get immediate feedback in the CLI. In this case, in the pull request, you see great level of insight here, similar to what you saw on the CLI, with regards to like comparing the PR image to the one that is currently, in this case, running in production. Yeah, so this is the version currently running in what we call a stream or an environment, currently running in production. And you can kind of see this right there where developers can kind of reason about this in their PR when they do their peer review and stuff. Let's take a quick look if this build has finished. It has indeed, so let's go here. And our image is now there. Doesn't quite look like what I expected. Well, luckily, I prepared this before. So there is an image down here, the PR number 6, which is kind of like the same thing, me raising a pull request with the same changes. Let's just go back to that repository to show you. There's a pull request here. This is the PR number 6 that I raised yesterday in preparation. So no other changes than the one that I just did locally. I must have pushed something else to a random place. That's the same image. That's the image that I intended to build. And Scout is now kind of telling me on that particular image, you actually fixed all these vulnerabilities. The one policy that I haven't fixed is the one down there, which is kind of like the SSC metadata verified and attached. That policy requires an SBOM and a provenance attestation to be there. And this particular image, I did not push an SBOM. So let's take another look at the comparison that I highlighted in the demo. So I can do Scout compare, and I can use my PR6 image against the one currently running in production. And I can do this before even pushing that image into the registry, right? It could have just existed in your local Docker daemon, and it would have worked in the same way. And you see a couple of things now, which is it's pulling down the image, it's pulling down the details about the images that you want to compare to. It's querying for policy results, and then preparing the output. So if I scroll up here now, you see like all the details. And again, this is the PR number 6 image, the one that I prepared on the changes. And you see kind of Scout picked up on the fact that I updated my base image, which you can see down here. It's now 3.18 and not 3.14 anymore. In case you're wondering, how do we know this? This is part of the provenance attestation. It's embedded when you run your build with BuildKit. All the sources that go into your build, all the materials, as kind of referred to in the salsa sense, are being recorded in your provenance attestation. So what is your git commit char? your Git repo, that goes into the provenance attestation, your base image goes in there, and all the various other kind of multi-stage base images will be recorded in that provenance attestation. And again, a few other interesting bits and pieces, labels as they change, and of course in this particular case we're changing the commit char, and here, very interestingly, the changes to kind of the policy. As you kind of work, you can immediately see the feedback in the CLI here. And the bit down here is I just like this because I'm really a geek and I'm really interested in like what is happening. So for example, if you ever want to know what's, let's say Docker Scout. Now I'm going off script, so let's see what happens. Alpine 314 to Alpine 318. Just picking small images given the internet. One thing that Amy mentioned in the keynote today is that we will be shipping SBOM and provenance attestations. We're going to be signing them for all of our Docker official images content. Then we wouldn't even need to pull down the images anymore because they would have SBOMs attached. But this is giving you a very quick overview of like which packages actually did change between these two versions, right? So I'm comparing 314 against 318 now. That way around, I did actually downgrade. I should have done it the other way around. I changed all these packages. So it's a really interesting way of like just really quickly looking at how do random images change? Like what is in them? What can you do with them? It doesn't just only work on your own images. Interestingly here, there are no policy results. Why is that? That's because this is an image that is not in your Docker Hub organization, so it's not one of your images. We have not calculated online policy results for that. But there's a little trick here. You can pull them down. If you pull them and run the policy evaluation, then the policy evaluation will happen locally, which effectively means there are a bunch of containers running in your daemon that are effectively our policies, and then you would get results. So this is just like for remote images that sit in your registry that we have integrated with Docker Scout, you get these results right there in the CLI. For images that you don't own, you can still pull them down and use local policy evaluation. All right, let's just take a quick look. What are some of the other things that we can talk about? One thing that I didn't cover earlier is kind of like the vulnerability search. So one of the things that a lot of you will be doing next week is searching for a new vulnerability on a package called curl, which they're going to be announcing on October the 11th. So it's already good to know, like, where would I be affected in theory, right? So you can go over to the Packages tab and start searching for curl. So that would give you all images across all your organization that are using curl. And you could prepare yourself for what's going to come next week. And they call it, on their Twitter announcement, they said buckle up. So it seems to be something serious. Although curl being curl, it's probably not a tool that a lot of people use in production. But who knows, right? It's worth reviewing. So prepare yourself. There's a way for you to search this. If you had your repositories enabled in Scout, we would have indexed all your images. We would have captured all the information coming out of the SBOM, and we would have made it searchable for you. So heading back over here to the policy page, just saying filter this down to the production environment already gives me like a great reduction of like the things that I should care about. And I can now drill in. Of course, read up on all the nitty-gritty details of CVEs. What's even more interesting is the My Images screen. So instead of clicking through each and every image, running an analysis on each and every image in your production cluster, it's one click here. It's production, images only, find the CVE that you're interested in, take a look at what images are affected, and off you go. There's a lot of like the manual searching for information. A lot of these things are gone if you're enabling Docker Scout and bringing these integrations in. And again, we will be adding a new kind of like stand-in CVE later today or tomorrow for the newly to be announced curl CVE that would allow you to kind of like see the information on this page and see all the images that you have and that are going to be potentially affected. I was told that we should keep about 15 minutes left for Q&A at the end. We are at 14 minutes. With that, Jason, you want to come back up and we'll open up the floor for some questions? Hopefully you have questions. Of course. Comment. Thank you. That's what we wanted to hear. That's great. Thank you very much.
What was the comment?
It's I think he said amazing. It's amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you very much. So, question over here.
I noticed that there was a GitLab integration.
Yes.
Does that integrate with the pull request as well, like you showed on GitHub's?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. Let me just repeat the question for the online audience. There is a GitLab integration, and the question is, does this integrate as nicely with the merge requests, I think is what it's called, on GitLab, as we do for GitHub. It's not as nicely integrated, but you can get it to work. So all of our CLI commands that are available on these various CI platforms, they all output Markdown. And the Markdown can be used to like put into comments. Now for GitHub, we created a dedicated action that does this, but it can be done on GitLab and like Circle and other CI environments, yes. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Kind of a follow-up. Does that, I assume that that's just during that runtime and it shows in the merge request, but it does not show up there on the Docker Scout website, is that
It does not, no. So there are various ways of getting images showing up on Docker Scout. There is registry integrations, so you can integrate with, currently it's JFrog on-prem and cloud, it's Docker Hub and ECR, Amazon's container registry. And there's also a way of like pushing the metadata of your images into Scout without sending the images to us. That's part of the CLI. And that's something that if you're using a different registry that we don't natively support yet, you could use that facility to send images to Scout. And you could use the same features as demonstrated today without any kind of tight registry integration.
So in the keynote, it was mentioned SonarQube. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the integration with SonarQube.
Yeah, totally. So what we did for SonarQube, and that's really interesting because that spans, like normally you don't have quality metrics for container images on SonarQube, right? SonarQube operates on your Git source code. So what we have done there is effectively every image is built out of a Git commit that is kind of like part of the image metadata. So using the platform capabilities of effectively in the background building a connected graph out of all the data that we put into the database. And that means that you can navigate from your image via the Git commit to anything else that is attaching to these commits, like builds, SonarQube quality gates, for example. So what's happening here is in the moment that you're pushing a Git commit, we receive that Git commit if you have our GitHub integration configured. And with that information, we can then kind of go off and wait for SonarQube to send us an event to collate the SonarQube quality gates to the commit. The next thing that comes in is the image comes into our database, and that's getting correlated to the commit because it carries metadata. Ideally, that's a provenance attestation that's hopefully going to be signed in the future. So we can link all these things up, and that's the way how this particular policy works. And then it's really up to you how you define your quality gates on SonarQube in your organization. I just used the stock standard ones and kind of added a few violations for demo purposes, but it's really kind of you're totally free to choose whatever policies and rules you want in these systems. But that's the general idea of Scout is like bring an integration, bring data in, and can then reason on the data and take activity and bring this into the inner loop so that your developers can kind of take action.
How do you account for exceptions? Like if you have an exception to a vulnerability you want to skip,
Yeah,
you're okay with
that's a very good question. So if I scroll further up here, what you see here, the affected. Oh, that's.
Yeah, it's switching back now.
Yeah. So this affected section here, and I was told I shouldn't watch the screen and point. This thing here is really a VEX statement. A VEX statement is a vulnerability exclusion exchange. Sorry, it's not exclusions. Exploitation exchange. Thank you, yeah. So it doesn't stand for exclusions. It's a new spec that's coming out of the CISA group, the same body that is kind of standardizing S-bombs for like in America. And the purpose is that you, as a provider of container images or software artifacts, have the ability to say, I'm affected, I'm investigating, or I'm not affected by a certain CVE within a certain context. So you have various levels of granularity here. You can say, this is a product, within that product is a certain package, and I'm affected, I'm not affected, I'm still investigating. And that's going to turn, hopefully, into an attestation in the future that people can consume off of a registry. So what this is in here is it's already a little preview of what's going to come next for us, which is vulnerability or VEX support. On the CLI, we already do this. So our Sysdig integration creates VEX statements, puts them into the database. So in this case, we have two directional, kind of like we have the VEX statement that effectively says you are affected because we discovered that this image is used at runtime. And we have the opposite, which means this image is not used at runtime, so you're not affected. And that's kind of like all expressed in a VEX statement that you can either attach to the image, you can put into a Git repo, or you can have that on your local file system and kind of feed it into the CLI when you evaluate, when you run the CVE command. What we don't yet have is any way of surfacing that information on scout.docker.com. But trust me, that's coming. But it's a fairly involved and complicated process because VEX assumes that you don't have to trust every publisher. So just because some random person attached a VEX statement to a container image doesn't mean that you have to trust it. So there is a little bit of like, who do you trust? Like, which publisher do you trust? Do those things need to be signed? And we're working with customers right now to figure out what are the workflows that they want to kind of, that are willing to accept here. Do they have to be signed? Do I need to specify the signing, or like identity, and so on and so forth? Any other questions? Doesn't look like we have any other questions.
So if no more questions, we'll switch screens and show the quick start documents. So docker.com/scout/quickstart. And this steps through how you can get up and running with Docker Scout. It gives you the quick overview, including a 5-minute demo from CD. And then it shows the various steps that would be involved in order to enable the repos that you want to be able to analyze with Docker Scout. And steps you through many steps beyond that within our documentation. So I'll leave you with this link, docs.docker.com/scout/quickstart, and that will help you to get up and running quickly. So thank you so much. Thank you, CD.